My dear friend, you may not yet grasp it, but what you are about to hear has the potential to transform everything. Pause for a moment, quiet your surroundings, and give your full attention to what is coming. You are here not by chance, but by divine design, a moment carefully orchestrated by God Himself. Have you wondered why you've been led here? Can you sense the stirring in your spirit? That is no accident. It is the voice of God calling out to you, gently whispering that something extraordinary awaits. This message is not for those who casually observe or dabble in faith. It is for the chosen, those specifically called by God for a purpose far beyond human comprehension. But here is the crucial question: do you believe you are one of the chosen? If you feel uncertain, that is okay. Stay with me, for by the end of this message, you will understand why you have been set apart and how to embrace the key to your destiny. Consider the story of Gideon from the book of Judges. Gideon, the least in his family and hiding in fear, was chosen by God to deliver Israel. When the angel of the Lord appeared to him, the words spoken were powerful: "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Judges 6 verse 12. Neve. Gideon struggled to see himself as chosen, mighty, or destined for greatness. He questioned, doubted, and even tested God. Yet, God saw within him a strength and potential Gideon could not see in himself. When Gideon finally stepped into his calling, he led a small army to a miraculous victory against overwhelming odds. Is it possible that, like Gideon, you are being called for something remarkable? Do you sometimes feel unworthy, overlooked, or inadequate? Yet, here you are, receiving this message, because God has chosen you. Just as He placed a divine strength within Gideon, He has placed the same within you, waiting to be awakened and activated. This message is not born of human intellect or worldly wisdom. It comes directly from the Spirit of the living God, a word forged in heavenly fire, infused with unshakable power, and intended to stir the dormant greatness within your soul. Can you sense it? Even now, the Spirit of God is moving, stirring your heart, urging you to listen closely. This is not merely a message, it is a call to action. It is the trumpet sound echoing across the heavens, announcing that the time has come for you to step into your God-ordained destiny. What sets the chosen apart is not wealth, talent, or status, but strength. This is not a strength of the body or mind, but divine strength, eternal, unyielding, and planted within you by the Creator Himself. This strength is the key to everything. It is what lifts the conqueror above the defeated, the chosen above the ordinary, the victorious above the broken. Today, we will unlock that strength together. If this message resonates within you, if you feel something stirring deep in your soul, boldly proclaim it. Write 777 as a declaration. This number is not random, it is a proclamation to the heavens: I hear you, Lord. I am chosen, and I am ready to fulfill your purpose. God's chosen ones are not defined by earthly status, wealth, or recognition. They are handpicked by the Creator for a purpose that surpasses human comprehension. Throughout history, God has consistently called ordinary individuals to extraordinary missions. These moments of calling are not for the faint of heart, they are for those willing to listen, to trust, and to walk by faith even when the path ahead is unclear. Just as the still, small voice called Samuel in the night, so too does God call His chosen ones in ways that may seem subtle yet unmistakably powerful. When we speak of divine appointment, we must understand that it is both a privilege and a responsibility. It signifies that the Creator of the universe has set His gaze upon you, not because of anything you have done to earn it, but because of His boundless grace and purpose. He sees beyond your doubts, fears, and perceived inadequacies. He sees the potential He placed within you, the strength He has embedded in your spirit, and the mission He has entrusted to your hands. The question you must ask yourself is this: will you answer the call? The story of Gideon in the book of Judges serves as a profound reminder of how God's calling often defies human expectations. Gideon, a man who saw himself as the least in his family and the weakest in his tribe, was approached by the angel of the Lord with a declaration that seemed almost absurd: "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Judges 6 verse 12. Neve. In that moment, Gideon could not see himself as God saw him. He questioned, doubted, and even tested the validity of the call. Yet, God's view of Gideon did not change. God saw a mighty warrior where Gideon saw a fearful man. This is the essence of being chosen by God. It is not about how you see yourself, but about how God sees you and the destiny He has designed for you. When God calls His chosen ones, He also equips them. He provides the strength, wisdom, and resources necessary to fulfill their purpose. Gideon's journey is a testament to this truth. Despite his fears and uncertainties, he was empowered to lead a small army to victory against overwhelming odds. The same God who strengthened Gideon is at work within you, placing a divine strength in your spirit that is waiting to be activated. This strength is not derived from human intellect or physical ability. It is eternal, unyielding, and rooted in the power of the Creator. It is important to understand that a divine calling often requires stepping out of comfort zones. The path God sets before His chosen ones is rarely easy or straightforward. It is a journey marked by faith, perseverance, and the willingness to trust God even in the face of uncertainty. The challenges you encounter are not meant to break you, but to shape you, to refine your character, and to draw you closer to God. Every trial you face is a step in the process of becoming the person God has called you to be. The stirring in your spirit that you may feel even now is no accident. It is the voice of God, calling you to rise above the noise of the world and to embrace the destiny He has prepared for you. This is not a message for the casual listener or the faint-hearted. It is for those who sense that they have been set apart for something greater, something that goes beyond the mundane and touches the eternal. As you reflect on this truth, let it sink deeply into your heart. You are not here by accident. You are here by divine appointment. God's chosen ones are called to be light in a world often overshadowed by darkness. They are called to stand firm in faith, to be unwavering in their trust in God, and to carry out the mission He has placed before them with courage and conviction. This calling is not a burden but a profound honor, a testament to God's unwavering belief in you and His purpose for your life. So, as you ponder these words, take a moment to silence the noise around you and listen to the still, small voice within. Recognize that this is your moment, your divine appointment. Will you rise to the calling? Will you embrace the purpose for which you were created? The choice is yours, but the opportunity is extraordinary. God's gaze is upon you, and His plan is unfolding in ways you cannot yet fully see. Trust in Him, and take the first step into the destiny He has prepared for you. God's chosen ones are called not only to recognize their identity, but also to walk in alignment with the divine purpose for which they were created. The concept of being chosen carries profound significance, rooted in the assurance that God's plans are perfect, intentional, and unfailing. As a chosen one, it is essential to understand that this calling is not a fleeting moment or a random selection. It is a deliberate act of divine love and grace, a reflection of God's eternal design. The journey of being chosen often begins with a stirring, an awakening in the soul that cannot be ignored. This stirring is not born of human ambition or worldly aspirations, but is instead the gentle prompting of the Holy Spirit, drawing you closer to the heart of God. It is a call to rise above the ordinary and to step into the extraordinary path that God has laid before you. This path, though often fraught with challenges, is illuminated by God's presence and guided by His unchanging word. Consider the example of Moses, a man chosen by God to lead the Israelites out of bondage and into freedom. From the moment of his birth, Moses' life was marked by divine intervention. Saved from Pharaoh's decree to kill all Hebrew baby boys, he was raised in the palace of Egypt. Yet his heart remained connected to his people. When God appeared to Moses in the burning bush, it was a pivotal moment of calling. Moses, like many chosen ones, initially doubted his abilities. He questioned God's choice, saying, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" Exodus 3 verse 11. Neve. God's response to Moses' hesitation was profound. "I will be with you." Exodus 3 verse 12. Neve. This assurance is central to the identity of God's chosen ones. It is not their strength, wisdom, or qualifications that define their ability to fulfill God's purpose, but rather His presence with them. When God calls, He also equips, providing the courage, resources, and strength necessary to overcome any obstacle. Moses' story reminds us that being chosen is not about perfection or self-sufficiency. It is about obedience and trust in God's plan. The calling of God's chosen ones is often accompanied by a season of preparation. Before stepping into their God-ordained roles, they may experience trials that refine their character and deepen their faith. For Moses, this period of preparation spanned decades in the wilderness, where he tended sheep and learned humility. During this time, God was shaping Moses into a leader who could depend entirely on him. This process of refinement is an integral part of the journey, ensuring that the chosen are ready to handle the responsibilities and challenges that come with their calling. As a chosen one, it is vital to understand that your life is not your own. You have been set apart for a divine purpose, and this requires surrendering your plans, desires, and ambitions to God's will. This surrender is not a loss but a gain, as it allows you to align your life with God's perfect design. The Apostle Paul captures this truth beautifully in Galatians 2 verse 20, NIV, "I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave Himself for me." The path of God's chosen ones is often marked by opposition. The enemy seeks to thwart God's plans, and those who are called by Him frequently face trials that test their faith. Yet, these trials are not a sign of abandonment but a confirmation of calling. They serve as opportunities to witness God's power and faithfulness in action. When Moses faced Pharaoh and demanded the release of the Israelites, he encountered resistance at every turn. However, God demonstrated His sovereignty through miraculous signs and wonders, ultimately delivering His people with a mighty hand. In the face of challenges, God's chosen ones are called to stand firm, holding onto the promises of God and trusting in His timing. The strength to endure comes not from within but from the unshakable foundation of God's Word. Isaiah 40 verse 31, NIV, offers a powerful reminder, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles, they will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." This strength, renewed daily through faith and communion with God, enables the chosen to persevere and fulfill their purpose. The calling of God's chosen ones is not confined to individual fulfillment, but extends to the greater mission of advancing God's kingdom on earth. As Moses led the Israelites to freedom, so too are the chosen called to lead others to the knowledge of God's love, grace, and truth. This mission is not one of self-promotion, but of pointing others to the glory of God. It is a call to be a light in the darkness, a beacon of hope in a world that desperately needs to encounter the transformative power of God. As you reflect on what it means to be chosen, consider the example of Moses and the countless others who have walked this path before you. Their stories are a testament to God's faithfulness and the incredible things He can accomplish through those who are willing to say yes to His call. In the face of doubt, opposition, and uncertainty, remember that you are not alone. The same God who called Moses, Gideon, and Paul is calling you. He is with you, equipping you for the journey ahead and empowering you to fulfill the purpose for which you were created. In the life of God's chosen ones, there is an inherent strength that sets them apart. This strength, however, is not of human origin. It is divine, eternal, and uniquely placed within them by the Creator Himself. To be chosen by God is to be entrusted with a power that defies earthly limitations. This divine strength is not merely a gift, but a vital element of their calling, a source of sustenance and empowerment that enables them to overcome challenges and fulfill the purpose for which they were created. When God calls His chosen ones, He does not leave them to navigate the path on their own. Instead, He fills them with His strength, ensuring they are equipped to face the battles ahead. This strength is not always visible to others and may even be hidden from the chosen themselves until the moment it is needed. It is a reservoir of power, activated through faith, obedience, and a deep connection with God. This truth is echoed throughout Scripture, where we see God's chosen rise to the occasion, not by their own might, but by the power of God working within them. Consider the story of David, a young shepherd who was chosen by God to become the king of Israel. When David faced Goliath, he did not rely on the conventional weapons of war or the training of a seasoned soldier. Instead, he drew upon the strength God had placed within him. Armed with a sling, 5 smooth stones, and unshakable faith, David declared, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." 1 Samuel 17 verse 45. Neve. David's victory over Goliath was not the result of physical strength or skill, but a demonstration of divine power working through him. This same strength is available to all who are called by God. It is a strength that transcends circumstances and equips the chosen to stand firm in the face of adversity. Yet, it is crucial to understand that this strength is not automatic. It must be cultivated through a relationship with God, prayer, meditation on His Word, and a heart of surrender are essential for accessing the full measure of this divine power. The Apostle Paul understood this deeply, writing, "I can do all this through Him who gives me strength." Philippians 4 verse 13. Neve. Paul's life was a testament to the transformative power of God's strength, enabling him to endure trials, persecution, and hardships while remaining steadfast in his mission. One of the most profound aspects of God's strength is its ability to manifest in moments of weakness. Human frailty becomes the backdrop against which God's power is most vividly displayed. This paradoxical truth is captured in 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9 NIV, where God tells Paul, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." For the chosen, this means that their limitations are not obstacles but opportunities for God's glory to be revealed. When they surrender their weakness to Him, they create space for His strength to flow through them, accomplishing what would otherwise be impossible. The strength of God's chosen ones is also a shield against the schemes of the enemy. Spiritual warfare is an inevitable part of their journey, as the enemy seeks to disrupt and derail God's plans. However, the strength placed within the chosen is not only defensive but also offensive. It enables them to stand their ground and advance God's kingdom, even in the face of fierce opposition. Ephesians 6 verses 10 to 11 NIV. exhorts believers to be strong in the Lord and in His mighty power. Put on the full armor of God, so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. This strength is a divine armor, empowering the chosen to confront and overcome the forces that seek to hinder their calling. Moreover, the strength of God's chosen is not for their benefit alone. It is given so that they may serve others, glorify God, and bring His purposes to fruition on earth. This strength fuels acts of compassion, courage, and unwavering faith that inspire and uplift those around them. It enables the chosen to be a light in the darkness, a testament to the power and goodness of God. Through their actions, others are drawn to the truth of God's love and the reality of His transformative power. The journey of the chosen is not without its moments of doubt and struggle. There are times when the weight of their calling feels overwhelming, and the path ahead seems insurmountable. Yet, it is in these moments that God's strength becomes most evident. As they lean into Him, they discover a power that is inexhaustible and a grace that is sufficient for every need. This reliance on God's strength fosters a deeper relationship with Him, reinforcing their faith and fortifying their spirit for the journey ahead. The strength of God's chosen ones is a reflection of His character. It is a testament to His faithfulness, His power, and His unwavering commitment to His people. It is a reminder that those who are called by Him are never alone and never without the resources needed to fulfill their purpose. This divine strength is not an abstract concept but a living reality, accessible to all who place their trust in the Creator. As you walk the path of a chosen one, remember that the strength you carry is not your own. It is a gift from God, a manifestation of His presence within you. It is a strength that can overcome any challenge, outlast any trial, and accomplish any purpose. Trust in this strength, cultivate it through your relationship with God, and allow it to propel you forward in the mission He has entrusted to you. God's chosen ones often find themselves walking a path filled with trials and challenges, a journey that requires unwavering faith and steadfast trust in the Creator. These trials are not random or meaningless, they are intentional, woven into the divine blueprint to refine and prepare the chosen for the extraordinary purposes God has set before them. To be chosen by God is to embrace a life where difficulties are not signs of rejection but opportunities for growth and transformation. Throughout Scripture, we see examples of God's chosen being led through seasons of testing. These moments are not meant to break them but to strengthen their character, deepen their reliance on God, and reveal His glory. One of the most striking examples is the story of Joseph, a young man who was chosen by God to play a pivotal role in the survival of his people. Joseph's journey began with a dream, a glimpse of the destiny God had prepared for him. However, before he could step into that destiny, he faced betrayal, slavery, false accusations, and imprisonment. Joseph's trials could have easily led him to despair. Yet, in every situation, God's hand was upon him, orchestrating events for a greater purpose. When he was sold into slavery by his brothers, it was a step toward Egypt, where he would ultimately rise to power. When he was falsely accused and imprisoned, it positioned him to interpret Pharaoh's dreams, a moment that would change the course of his life and the fate of an entire nation. Joseph's story demonstrates that the trials faced by God's chosen ones are not setbacks, but setups, preparations for the fulfillment of God's divine plan. The trials of God's chosen ones are also a testament to His faithfulness. Even in the darkest moments, His presence is unwavering. In Psalm 23 verse 4, NIV, David writes, "Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me." This assurance of God's presence is a cornerstone of the chosen's journey. No matter how difficult the path may seem, they can trust that God is walking beside them. guiding them through every trial and providing the strength needed to endure. The purpose of trials is multifaceted. They serve to refine the chosen, removing impurities and shaping them into vessels fit for God's use. Just as gold is purified by fire, so too are the chosen refined by the trials they face. This process, though painful, is necessary for the fulfillment of their calling. It is through trials that they learn humility, patience, and reliance on God. These qualities are essential for those who are called to carry out His will, as they ensure that the chosen are not acting out of their own strength or ambition but are fully surrendered to His guidance. Trials also serve to build resilience and faith. When God's chosen ones face adversity, they are given the opportunity to witness His power and faithfulness in action. Each trial becomes a testimony of God's provision and deliverance, strengthening their faith and equipping them to face even greater challenges in the future. This resilience is not just for their benefit, but also for those around them. As they persevere through trials, they become a source of inspiration and encouragement to others, demonstrating the unshakable power of faith in God. Another purpose of trials is to reveal the depth of the chosen's trust in God. It is easy to trust Him when life is smooth and blessings abound. But true faith is tested in the fire of adversity. When the chosen choose to trust God even when the path is unclear and the outcome uncertain, they are making a powerful declaration of their faith. This trust honors God and opens the door for Him to work in miraculous ways, turning what seems like defeat into victory. The trials faced by God's chosen ones are also an opportunity for Him to display His glory. When the odds are stacked against them and victory seems impossible, God steps in and does what only He can do. This not only reinforces their faith, but also serves as a powerful witness to those who see God's hand at work. The story of Daniel in the lion's den is a perfect example. When Daniel's faith led him into a den of lions, God's power was displayed in a miraculous act of protection, turning a moment of certain death into a testimony of His sovereignty. As God's chosen ones navigate their trials, they must remember that these moments are temporary. The Apostle Paul captures this beautifully in 2 Corinthians 4 verse 17, NIV, "For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all." The trials they face are not the end of the story, but a necessary chapter in the journey toward the fulfillment of God's promises. Each trial is a stepping stone, bringing them closer to the destiny God has prepared for them. The path of God's chosen ones is not easy, but it is purposeful. Every trial, no matter how challenging, is a part of God's divine plan. These moments of testing are opportunities for growth, refinement, and the demonstration of His power. As they walk through these trials, the chosen are not alone. God is with them, strengthening, guiding, and preparing them for the extraordinary purposes He has in store. Through every challenge, they are reminded that they are not defined by their circumstances, but by the God who has called them. His plans are perfect, His faithfulness is unwavering, and His glory is revealed in every step of their journey. Opposition is often an undeniable hallmark in the journey of God's chosen ones. From the very moment a calling is placed upon their lives, the forces of resistance seem to rise, attempting to thwart the purpose ordained by the Creator. This opposition, while daunting, is not a reflection of weakness or failure. Rather, it is a profound indication of the magnitude of the calling and the threat it poses to the plans of the enemy. To be chosen by God is to carry a destiny so impactful that it disrupts the forces of darkness, compelling them to act in opposition. The Bible is replete with examples of chosen individuals who faced immense resistance. The story of Moses serves as a powerful reminder of how opposition often begins even before a calling is fully realized. From birth, Moses' life was under threat. Pharaoh's decree to kill all male Hebrew infants was a direct attempt to extinguish the deliverer God had appointed. Yet, God's plans are never thwarted. Through divine intervention, Moses was saved, raised in Pharaoh's own household, and prepared for the mission of leading the Israelites out of bondage. The very opposition he faced became the backdrop for God's miraculous work, showcasing his sovereignty and power. Similarly, the life of Jesus Christ exemplifies how opposition accompanies a divine calling. From his birth, Jesus was met with hostility. King Herod's attempt to kill him by ordering the massacre of innocent children in Bethlehem was a stark manifestation of the enemy's fear of the Messiah's arrival. Throughout his ministry, Jesus faced rejection, ridicule, and ultimately the cross. Yet, every act of opposition only served to fulfill the prophecy and accomplish the purpose for which he came. The cross, which seemed to be the ultimate defeat, became the greatest victory, illustrating that opposition cannot prevail against God's plans. Opposition often takes various forms in the lives of God's chosen ones. It may manifest as external challenges, such as persecution, criticism, or obstacles that appear insurmountable. At other times, it arises internally, in the form of doubt, fear, or feelings of inadequacy. These internal struggles are no less significant than external resistance, as they test the chosen's faith and reliance on God. The enemy's tactics are designed to sow confusion and discourage those who have been called. Yet God's chosen ones are equipped with the spiritual armor needed to withstand these attacks. The Apostle Paul's life vividly illustrates how external and internal opposition intersect. Paul, formerly known as Saul, was a fervent persecutor of Christians until his dramatic encounter with Christ on the road to Damascus. After his conversion, Paul became one of the most influential apostles, spreading the gospel to the Gentiles. However, his journey was marked by relentless opposition. He faced imprisonment, beatings, shipwrecks, and rejection. Yet he remained steadfast in his mission. Paul's writings reveal his deep understanding of the spiritual battle at play, as he urged believers to put on the full armor of God, so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. Ephesians 6 verse 11. Neve. The presence of opposition should not lead the chosen to question their calling, but to embrace it with greater determination. Resistance is often a sign that they are on the right path, advancing toward the fulfillment of God's purposes. The enemy does not waste energy opposing those who pose no threat to his plans. Therefore, when the chosen face resistance, they can take it as confirmation of the significance of their mission. It is a call to stand firm, drawing strength from God's promises and the assurance that He is with them. In the face of opposition, God's chosen ones are not left to fight alone. The Creator equips them with the tools needed to overcome every challenge. Prayer becomes a powerful weapon, enabling them to commune with God, seek His guidance, and find peace amidst the storm. The Word of God serves as a source of strength and encouragement, reminding them of His faithfulness and the ultimate victory that is theirs through Christ. Additionally, the Holy Spirit empowers them, providing wisdom, discernment, and the courage to persevere. Opposition also serves a refining purpose in the lives of the chosen. It strengthens their character, deepens their faith, and prepares them for greater responsibilities. Through adversity, they learn to depend entirely on God, recognizing that their strength and victory come not from their own efforts but from Him. The trials they endure become testimonies of God's power, showcasing His ability to bring triumph out of tribulation. The story of Nehemiah highlights how opposition can galvanize the chosen into action. When Nehemiah set out to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, he faced fierce resistance from those who sought to undermine his efforts. Despite threats and mockery, Nehemiah remained resolute, declaring, "The God of heaven will give us success." We his servants will start rebuilding. Nehemiah 2 verse 20. Neve. His unwavering faith and reliance on God enabled him to complete the task, turning opposition into an opportunity to glorify God. As God's chosen ones navigate the challenges before them, they must remember that opposition is not a sign of defeat but a stepping stone to victory. It is a reminder of the greatness of their calling and the power of the one who has called them. In the midst of resistance, they are being shaped, strengthened, and prepared for the fulfillment of their divine purpose. The God who called them is faithful, and his plans will prevail, no matter the opposition they face. Among the defining traits of God's chosen ones is their capacity to surrender completely to his will. This surrender is not an act of defeat, but a profound expression of trust and faith. In surrendering, they acknowledge their own limitations and invite God's limitless power to work through them. It is in these moments of yielding that God's strength is most clearly revealed, and his purposes are brought to fruition in ways that transcend human understanding. The story of the widow of Zarephath in 1 Kings 17 offers a compelling illustration of how surrender can unlock God's supernatural provision. When the prophet Elijah approached the widow during a time of severe famine, she was on the brink of despair. With only a handful of flour and a small amount of oil remaining, she intended to prepare one final meal for herself and her son before resigning to death. Elijah's request for a portion of her last provisions seemed audacious and even unreasonable. Yet, the widow chose to obey, surrendering her meager resources to the word of God spoken through Elijah. Her act of faith unleashed a miracle. Her jar of flour and jug of oil did not run out throughout the entire famine. This account demonstrates that when God's chosen ones step out in faith and surrender even the little they have, he responds with abundance and sustenance that defy natural laws. Surrender is often accompanied by moments of vulnerability, where the chosen must face their fears, uncertainties, and insecurities. These moments are not a sign of weakness, but an opportunity to lean entirely on God's strength. Consider Gideon, who doubted his ability to lead Israel against the Midianites, when God instructed him to reduce his army to just 300 men. Gideon's reliance on human strategy and numbers was stripped away. This act of surrender positioned him to witness God's power in a profound way. The victory over the Midianites was not achieved through human might, but through divine intervention, emphasizing that God's chosen ones are instruments of his glory when they submit to his plans. The surrender of God's chosen ones is not limited to material possessions or external circumstances. It also encompasses their innermost desires, ambitions, and fears. This level of surrender requires a deep relationship with God, built on trust and intimacy. Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac, his beloved son, is a profound example of this kind of surrender. In Genesis 22, God tested Abraham's faith by asking him to offer Isaac as a burnt offering. Though the request seemed to contradict God's promise to make Abraham the father of many nations, Abraham obeyed without hesitation. At the last moment, God intervened, providing a ram as a substitute for Isaac. Abraham's act of surrender not only reaffirmed his faith, but also demonstrated his absolute trust in God's character and promises. Surrender is the gateway to experiencing God's final strength. When human effort reaches its limits and all avenues appear closed, surrender allows God to step in and accomplish what seems impossible. This truth is powerfully illustrated in the life of Jesus Christ. In the Garden of Gethsemane, on the eve of his crucifixion, Jesus prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." Luke 22 verse 42. Neve. His surrender to the Father's will pave the way for the redemption of humanity. Though the path involved immense suffering, it culminated in the resurrection and victory over sin and death. Jesus' surrender was not a moment of weakness, but the ultimate display of strength rooted in obedience and trust in God's plan. God's chosen ones are called to surrender not because God needs their efforts or possessions, but because surrender aligns their hearts with His divine purpose. It removes the barriers of self-reliance, pride, and fear, creating space for God's power to flow freely. The Apostle Paul captures this beautifully in 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9, NIV, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Paul's own life exemplified this principle, as he faced countless trials yet declared, "When I am weak, then I am strong." 2 Corinthians 12 verse 10. Neve. His surrender to God's will enabled him to fulfill his calling and impact generations with the message of the gospel. Surrender is not a single act, but a continual process. It requires daily choices to trust God over personal understanding, to prioritize His will over one's own desires, and to place faith in His timing and provision. This ongoing surrender builds spiritual resilience, deepens faith, and cultivates a character that reflects God's glory. It also positions the chosen to be vessels through which God's purposes are accomplished on earth. The act of surrender often leads to transformation, not only in the lives of the chosen, but also in the lives of those around them. When God's chosen ones yield to His will, their faith becomes a testimony that inspires others to trust in God's power and goodness. Their lives become a living declaration of His sovereignty, showcasing how He works all things for good for those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. Romans 8 verse 28. Neve. As God's chosen ones walk the path of surrender, they are continually reminded that their strength does not come from their own efforts, but from the One who has called them. In surrendering to Him, they find the freedom to embrace their calling fully, the peace that surpasses understanding, and the strength to persevere through every challenge. Their surrender becomes the foundation upon which God's extraordinary plans are built, allowing His glory to shine through their lives in ways they could never achieve on their own. Faith is the lifeblood of God's chosen ones, a divine gift that sustains and empowers them through the complexities of their calling. This faith is not a mere belief in God's existence, but a deep-rooted trust in His promises, His timing, and His unchanging nature. For the chosen, faith serves as both a shield and a compass, guarding them against doubt and guiding them through the challenges they face. Their faith is tested not in moments of ease, but in the crucible of adversity, where it is refined and strengthened, becoming a testimony to God's glory. One of the most vivid examples of unwavering faith is found in the story of Daniel, a man of integrity and devotion. Daniel was chosen by God to serve as a witness to His power in a foreign land. His faith was put to the ultimate test when a royal decree prohibited prayer to anyone except the king. Daniel, however, remained steadfast in his commitment to God, continuing his daily prayers despite the threat of death. This act of faith led to his being thrown into the lion's den, a place of certain doom by human standards. Yet, Daniel's unwavering trust in God brought about a miraculous deliverance. The lions' mouths were shut, and Daniel emerged unharmed, a living testament to the power of faith in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. The faith of God's chosen ones is not passive but active, requiring a willingness to step out in obedience even when the path ahead is unclear. The story of Peter walking on water illustrates this principle beautifully. When Jesus called Peter to step out of the boat and walk toward Him, Peter's initial response was one of faith. He fixed his eyes on Jesus and began to walk on the water, defying natural laws. However, when Peter shifted his focus to the wind and waves, fear crept in, and he began to sink. This moment underscores the importance of keeping one's eyes fixed on God, even amidst the storms of life. For God's chosen, faith is not about the absence of fear, but about choosing to trust God above the fear. Faith also requires perseverance, a quality exemplified by the Apostle Paul. His life was marked by relentless challenges, imprisonment, beatings, shipwrecks, and opposition from both religious and political authorities. Yet, Paul's faith never wavered. He wrote in 2 Corinthians 4 verses 8 to 9, NIV, "We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed." Paul's unwavering faith enabled him to persevere through trials, transforming his suffering into a platform for proclaiming the gospel and encouraging others to remain steadfast in their own faith journeys. The faith of God's chosen ones often stands as a beacon of hope and inspiration to those around them. In moments of darkness, their unwavering trust in God becomes a light that guides others toward Him. This was evident in the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who refused to bow to King Nebuchadnezzar's golden statue. Their faith was tested when they were thrown into a blazing furnace. Yet they declared boldly, "If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and He will deliver us from your Majesty's hand. But even if He does not, we want you to know, Your Majesty, that we will not serve your gods." Daniel 3 verses 17 to 18. Neve. Their faith not only brought about their miraculous deliverance, but also led the king and those witnessing the event to recognize the sovereignty of the one true God. Faith does not eliminate the challenges faced by God's chosen ones, but provides the strength to endure and overcome them. It transforms trials into opportunities for growth and reveals the character of God in powerful ways. The faith of Abraham, for instance, was demonstrated when he obeyed God's command to leave his homeland and journey to an unknown destination. Abraham's trust in God's promise to make him the father of many nations was unwavering, even when circumstances seemed to contradict the promise. His faith was credited to him as righteousness, serving as a model for all who are called to walk by faith and not by sight. Faith also equips God's chosen ones to see beyond the immediate and focus on the eternal. This perspective enables them to endure hardships with hope, knowing that their trials are temporary and that God's promises are unshakable. The writer of Hebrews captures this beautifully in Hebrews 11 verse 1, NIV. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This confidence and assurance sustain the chosen through life's uncertainties, enabling them to remain steadfast in their mission. For God's chosen, faith is not merely a private matter, but a public declaration of trust in God's power and faithfulness. It is displayed through their actions, decisions, and perseverance, serving as a testimony to the world. Their faith inspires others to seek God, fostering a ripple effect that extends far beyond their immediate circumstances. As they walk in faith, they fulfill their calling to be a light in the world, pointing others to the hope and salvation found in Christ. In the journey of God's chosen ones, faith is the anchor that holds them steady, the compass that guides them forward, and the shield that protects them from doubt and despair. It is a dynamic and living trust in the Creator, one that grows stronger with every step of obedience and every act of surrender. Through faith, they find the strength to navigate the storms, the courage to face the unknown, and the assurance that God's promises will never fail. Faith is the foundation upon which their lives are built, a testament to the unshakable power of God at work within them. Obedience is a defining characteristic of God's chosen ones, an attribute that positions them to experience His miraculous power and provision. To obey God is to trust Him fully, even when His instructions defy human logic or understanding. This obedience is not rooted in fear or compulsion, but in love, reverence, and an unwavering belief in His sovereignty and goodness. For the chosen, obedience becomes the gateway through which God's glory is revealed and His purposes are fulfilled. One of the most striking examples of the miraculous outcomes of obedience is the story of the Israelites at the Red Sea, trapped between Pharaoh's advancing army and the impassable waters. the Israelites found themselves in a situation that seemed hopeless. Yet, God gave Moses a command that required bold faith: raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. Exodus 14 verse 16. Neve. Moses obeyed, and the waters parted, creating a pathway to freedom. This act of obedience not only delivered the Israelites, but also demonstrated God's unmatched power, leaving a legacy of faith that has inspired generations. The miracles that accompany obedience are not always as dramatic as the parting of a sea, but they are no less significant. In the New Testament, Jesus' first recorded miracle, turning water into wine at the wedding in Cana, came as a result of obedience. When the wine ran out, Jesus instructed the servants to fill 6 stone jars with water and then draw some out to present to the master of the banquet. The servants' willingness to follow an instruction that likely seemed illogical resulted in a miraculous transformation. This miracle revealed Jesus' divine authority and marked the beginning of his public ministry. Obedience often requires stepping into the unknown, trusting that God's wisdom far exceeds human understanding. Abraham's journey exemplifies this truth. When God called him to leave his homeland and go to a place he had never seen, Abraham obeyed without hesitation. Hebrews 11 verse 8, NIV, recounts, "By faith Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going." Abraham's obedience not only led to the fulfillment of God's promise to make him the father of many nations, but also established him as a model of faith and trust for all believers. For God's chosen ones, obedience is rarely without cost. It often involves sacrifice, a willingness to let go of personal plans, comforts, or resources to align with God's will. The story of Elijah and the widow of Zarephath illustrates this principle. During a severe famine, God instructed Elijah to seek sustenance from a widow who was herself on the brink of starvation. Despite her dire circumstances, the widow obeyed Elijah's request to make a small loaf of bread for him first, trusting in the promise that her jar of flour and jug of oil would not run dry. Her obedience brought about a miracle of provision that sustained her household throughout the famine. Obedience also serves as a testament to the faith of God's chosen ones. It is an outward expression of their inner trust in His character and promises. Noah's obedience in building the ark is a profound example of this. Despite the ridicule and disbelief of those around him, Noah faithfully followed God's instructions, preparing for a flood that had not yet occurred. His obedience preserved his family and the animals and reaffirmed God's covenant with humanity. Noah's story reminds us that obedience often requires perseverance and the courage to stand firm in faith, even when others do not understand. Obedience is not always met with immediate results, and this delay can test the patience and resolve of the chosen. However, God's timing is perfect, and His promises are sure. The story of Joshua and the walls of Jericho underscores this truth. God commanded the Israelites to march around the city for 7 days, a strategy that likely seemed foolish to human minds. Yet, they obeyed, and on the 7th day, the walls fell, delivering Jericho into their hands. This victory was a direct result of their faith and obedience, illustrating how persistence in following God's instructions can lead to miraculous breakthroughs. The obedience of God's chosen ones is often accompanied by blessings that extend beyond their immediate circumstances. Their willingness to follow God's commands has a ripple effect, impacting the lives of those around them and advancing His kingdom purposes. Mary's obedience to God's plan to bring the Messiah into the world through her is a striking example. Her response to the angel's announcement, "I am the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled," Luke 1 verse 38. Neve set in motion the fulfillment of God's greatest promise, the redemption of humanity through Jesus Christ. Obedience is not about understanding every detail of God's plan, but about trusting His wisdom and goodness. It requires humility, a willingness to submit to His authority, and a heart that prioritizes His will over personal desires. For God's chosen ones, obedience is both a privilege and a responsibility, a demonstration of their love for Him and their commitment to His purposes. Through their obedience, they become participants in His miraculous works, witnessing firsthand the power of a surrendered life. In the journey of God's chosen ones, obedience is a cornerstone of their relationship with the Creator. It positions them to experience His power, fulfill their calling, and impact the world around them. While the path of obedience may not always be easy, it is a path marked by divine encounters, supernatural provision, and the assurance that they are walking in step with the plans of a sovereign and loving God. Victory in the life of God's chosen ones is not defined by the absence of struggle, but by the power of God manifesting through their battles. For those called by God, challenges are not obstacles to avoid, but opportunities for His glory to be revealed. The chosen are often placed in situations where their own strength is insufficient, creating the perfect backdrop for God's power to shine. These battles, though daunting, are a vital part of their journey, shaping them into vessels fit for His purposes. One of the most profound examples of victory amid battles is found in the story of David and Goliath. David, a young shepherd, faced a giant who had instilled fear in an entire army. Armed only with a sling and 5 smooth stones, David declared his trust in the Lord, saying, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel." 1 Samuel 17 verse 45. Neve. David's victory was not the result of his own might, but of his faith in God's power. This triumph served as a reminder that God's chosen are not defined by their limitations, but by their reliance on Him. The chosen ones often face battles that test their faith and resilience. These challenges are not a sign of God's abandonment, but a confirmation of their calling. The story of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, exemplifies how reliance on God leads to victory. When faced with a vast army, Jehoshaphat turned to God in prayer, proclaiming, "We do not know what to do, but our eyes are on you." 2 Chronicles 20 verse 12. Neve. God's response was clear: "Do not be afraid or discouraged because of this vast army. For the battle is not yours, but God's." 2 Chronicles 20 verse 15. Neve. As the people of Judah worshipped, God caused confusion among their enemies, leading to their defeat without Judah lifting a single weapon. This story highlights the principle that victory for God's chosen is often achieved through faith, worship, and dependence on Him. The battles faced by God's chosen ones are not merely external, they often involve internal struggles such as doubt, fear, and feelings of inadequacy. These internal battles can be as challenging as physical confrontations, requiring a steadfast reliance on God's promises. The Apostle Paul's words in 2 Corinthians 10 verses 4-5 NIV offer encouragement. "The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. And we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ." For the chosen, victory begins in the mind, where God's truth dispels the lies of the enemy. Another powerful example of victory amid battles is the story of Joshua and the Battle of Jericho. God's instructions to Joshua and the Israelites were unconventional: march around the city once a day for 6 days, and on the 7th day, march around it 7 times while priests blow trumpets. This strategy defied human logic, yet Joshua and the people obeyed without question. On the 7th day, when they shouted as instructed, the walls of Jericho collapsed. and the city was delivered into their hands. This victory underscores the importance of obedience and faith in God's guidance, even when his methods seem unconventional or perplexing. Victory for God's chosen ones is not always immediate. It often requires perseverance and unwavering faith. The story of Elijah on Mount Carmel illustrates this truth. After challenging the prophets of Baal to a contest to demonstrate whose God was real, Elijah prayed for fire from heaven to consume his offering. Despite the odds and the ridicule of others, Elijah remained confident in God's power. When the fire fell, consuming the sacrifice, the wood, and even the water around the altar, it was a dramatic display of God's sovereignty and a decisive victory for his chosen prophet. This moment not only affirmed Elijah's faith, but also turned the hearts of the people back to God. The battles of God's chosen ones often serve a greater purpose beyond their personal victory. These moments become testimonies of God's faithfulness and power, inspiring others to trust in him. The deliverance of the Israelites from Pharaoh's army at the Red Sea is a prime example. When the waters parted, the Israelites crossed on dry ground, while the pursuing Egyptians were swept away. This miraculous event not only secured the Israelites' freedom, but also demonstrated God's might to the surrounding nations. The chosen are called to be witnesses of God's glory, their victory serving as a testament to his unfailing love and power. In the battles faced by God's chosen, prayer is a vital weapon. Through prayer, they align themselves with God's will, seek his guidance, and draw strength from his presence. Prayer shifts the focus from the magnitude of the challenge to the greatness of God. When the early church faced persecution, they gathered to pray, asking for boldness to continue proclaiming the gospel. In response, God shook the place where they were meeting and filled them with the Holy Spirit, enabling them to speak his word with courage. Acts 4 verse 31. This shows that prayer is not just a cry for help, but a declaration of trust in God's ability to intervene. The victories of God's chosen ones remind us that battles are not fought in vain. Each challenge faced and overcome serves to refine their character, deepen their faith, and advance God's kingdom. The battles may be intense, but the assurance of God's presence and power provides the strength to endure. Through every victory, the chosen reflect the truth that the battle belongs to the Lord and that his purposes will always prevail. Living as one of God's chosen ones is both a profound privilege and responsibility. It shapes identity, purpose, and actions. As the chosen live to reveal God's glory, share his love, and advance his kingdom, this calling is not earned but given by grace, reflecting God's divine plan to work through those set apart for his purposes. The chosen are called to be ambassadors of God's love, light, and truth. Their lives stand as testimonies of his faithfulness, pointing others to the hope found in him. This requires full surrender to God, trusting his plans even when the path is unclear. It is a life marked by faith, obedience, and humility, magnifying the greatness of the one who called them.